For many centuries, the galaxy floated in a strange and quiet peace. After the final war between the Arcsii Dominion and the Trivar Coalition, nothing major had happened for a long time. Every species, every empire, had agreed no more great battles, no more galaxy-wide destruction. The Galactic Union had been formed to protect peace, with representatives from over 100 star systems working together. It felt like the golden age of civilization. Trade routes were stable, borders were respected, and even the old warlords had settled down into politicians. Yet in this time of peace, something started to change. Tiny signs, easy to miss. First, a small listening post on the edge of neutral space stopped reporting. Then, a mining station failed to respond. A few diplomats whispered it might be technical problems or pirates, but others weren't so sure. When a science vessel went to investigate and never returned, fear returned to the hearts of those who remembered the old times. The static they picked up from that part of space wasn't just empty, it felt heavy, like a warning hidden in silence. Deep in a secure chamber at the Union's capital, high-ranking officials from all major species gathered in secret. The room was cold, quiet, and filled with tension. No one dared speak first. Finally, Grand Counselor Varric of the Luthari broke the silence. "I fear we may be dealing with something old," he said, his voice low and slow. Eyes turned to him. "Old?" asked another delegate. "Yes," Varric nodded. "There was a name we erased from the records. A species we once watched destroy itself. A species that disappeared from the stars before most of you were born. They called themselves humans." The room fell into complete silence. Most had only heard stories, rumors told by ex-soldiers and historians who loved drama. According to old records, humans were dangerous, chaotic, and unpredictable. They fought each other more than any other species. And then, just when they were reaching the stars, they vanished. Some believed they had destroyed themselves. Others thought they had gone into hiding. But no one ever expected them to return. Not after so many centuries. Still, the sudden disappearances of outer colonies could not be ignored. An investigation team was quietly sent to one of the lost systems. Their report, when it came back, shocked everyone. Or rather, what came back wasn't a report, it was a single transmission. A video file, short and chilling. It showed a starbase, floating in space. The station was dead, its lights off, its windows cracked. All systems were disabled. And written across its surface, scorched deep into the metal in large burning letters, were the words WARE, a WAKE. There was no sound, just the message. That was the last anyone heard from the investigation team. They were never seen again. The Union began to panic quietly. They didn't want the public to know, not yet. But behind closed doors, every powerful government started preparing for something unknown. Fleets were silently moved. Defense systems were activated. Surveillance increased. But no matter how much they watched, they couldn't find the source. It was like a ghost moving through space, picking its targets, leaving behind only silence and fear. Rumors began spreading among the outer worlds. Some said they saw a massive ship, black as space, with red markings glowing like blood. Others spoke of strange signals, deep and ancient, speaking in languages no one remembered. In the dark corners of space, one word began to rise again: human. The fear wasn't just about war. It was about the unknown. If humans had survived, if they had hidden for this long, what had they become? The Union tried to stop the fear from spreading. People were already whispering about Earth, the lost homeworld. It had never been found again after the fall. No one knew where it had gone. Some believed it was destroyed. Others thought it was hidden behind technology beyond their understanding. Whatever the truth was, it now felt closer than ever. And then, just when fear reached its highest point, all communication in 3 systems was suddenly lost in a single hour. No distress calls. No warnings. Just gone. Empty signals. The silence felt like the breath before something terrible. Across the galaxy, leaders, soldiers, and civilians alike looked up at the stars with unease. Something was coming. something no one could stop, something no one understood. In the center of it all, hidden in the darkness between stars, a ship waited. Its hull was made of materials never seen before. Its engines moved without sound. Its crew didn't speak, they obeyed. At its center, a single human stood, watching the galaxy with cold, steady eyes. He gave no orders. He didn't have to. The galaxy had forgotten them. But humans had not forgotten the galaxy. They had watched. They had prepared. And now, they were coming back, not to ask, not to talk, but to remind the stars who they truly were. The Galactic Union was on edge, and in its panic, it did what it always did when the unknown appeared. It sent diplomats. A fleet of 12 shining vessels, carrying trained ambassadors from 10 different species, was ordered into Sector H7, the region where entire systems had gone silent. These were not warships, but heavily protected envoy-class vessels meant for first contact, peace offerings, and negotiation with mysterious civilizations. They were equipped with translation tech, broadcasting beacons, and flags of neutrality that glowed in every known frequency. The galaxy believed in talking before shooting, especially after centuries of war. As the fleet entered the dark space beyond the known charts, everything felt wrong. The stars here seemed colder. The background noise of the universe, the soft hum of radiation and energy, was almost completely gone. The silence in this part of space was unnatural. Even machines behaved strangely. AI guidance systems lagged, sensors flickered, and communication links kept resetting. The diplomats continued forward, trying to maintain calm. But every hour brought more unease. They didn't know they were already being watched. Far ahead, at the edge of an uncharted moon's orbit, something enormous waited in the darkness. At first, it looked like a shadow, a trick of the void. But as the ships approached, the shadow moved, and suddenly it became clear this wasn't a planet or an asteroid. It was a ship, larger than anything they had ever seen. Not just big in size, but in presence. It didn't shine. It didn't glow. It absorbed light like a hole in space, and on its front burned a single red mark, an ancient symbol once seen on long-forgotten Earth broadcasts, a broken circle with a vertical line through the center, surrounded by 5 stars. The diplomats hesitated. Their commanders debated retreat, but before they could decide, their systems froze. Lights dimmed, engines stalled, and the fleet began to drift. Then, one by one, their ships were pulled into a perfect formation, not by force, but by some kind of unseen control, as if the black ship had taken over space itself. The stars spun around them, and in the silence, a message began to play. It wasn't a voice. It was a memory. Thousands of years compressed into images and feelings. They saw Earth burning. They felt human pain. They witnessed betrayal, sacrifice, and survival. They experienced the silence of centuries, where a broken species rebuilt itself in the shadows, learning, adapting, evolving beyond anything the galaxy had imagined. The memory ended with one sentence burned into their minds: "We remember everything." As the message faded, the diplomats realized their ships were no longer drifting. They were positioned in front of something that made their hearts sink. Floating in space was the wreckage of another Union fleet, ships destroyed and rearranged into a terrifying sculpture, a warning. The remains were twisted into a formation that mimicked the Union's crest, but corrupted. In the center, using the bones of metal and hull, was one more sentence, written in the forgotten language of old Earth: "This was your first and only chance." The diplomats had no weapons. No response. They tried to broadcast messages of peace, offers of understanding, but their signals were ignored. One ship launched a distress beacon. It vanished before it could finish its signal. No explosion. No light. Just gone like a candle in a storm. That's when they knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a species making contact. This was judgment. They weren't being asked to talk. They were being shown what happens to those who forget the past. The UNS Vengeance, the name of the massive human ship, didn't fire a single shot. It didn't need to. Its presence, its silence, and its warning were enough. Slowly, the remaining ships were turned back toward Union space. Engines reactivated. Controls returned. It was not a mercy. It was a message. Leave. Tell them. Warn them. The surviving diplomats returned, trembling. Their words didn't match their expressions. They spoke of a ship that made stars feel small, of a technology that didn't obey physics, of a force that made even the bravest captains stay silent. And most importantly, they carried a single, unshakable truth: humans had returned, and they were not the same. These were not explorers or traders. These were survivors shaped by endless preparation. What shocked the Union more was how well humans understood fear. They hadn't destroyed the fleet. They had let them live just enough to spread it. Across the galaxy, news traveled faster than light. Everyone now knew. Something ancient was awake again, and it remembered everything. The galaxy had been holding its breath ever since the truth about Earth was revealed. But despite warnings and signs, arrogance remained a strong poison among the leaders of the Galactic Union. A council of overconfident species gathered in secret and decided that the human threat must be tested, probed, and, if possible, contained before it became unstoppable. They believed they could strike first, with precision and control, to show dominance without starting a war. A fleet of warships, the most advanced the Union had ever assembled, was sent toward one of the systems believed to be a hidden human base, a lifeless zone with no communication, no signs of life, just floating silence. What they didn't know was that humans were always listening. The moment the fleet entered the dead system, everything began to feel wrong. Instruments started failing without reason. It was not a trap in the traditional sense, it was a psychological storm. The human defenses didn't reveal themselves, they simply distorted reality. Pilots began reporting strange dreams during sleep cycles, officers claimed to hear voices in empty halls, and captains started to question each other's orders. Then came the sound, a low hum, not mechanical, but felt deep in the bones. The Union ships tried to retreat, but the exit routes were already blocked by human stealth cruisers that had been watching silently. The battle began not with missiles, but with confusion. Entire Union systems shut down without impact, and artificial intelligences went silent as if they had been erased from existence. When the humans finally revealed themselves, it wasn't in overwhelming numbers, but in overwhelming control. One human ship could disable 10 with a single pulse of unknown energy. Union soldiers panicked, not understanding what was happening, as their ships twisted out of formation, collided with each other, or simply stopped responding. The humans didn't speak. They didn't send a warning. They simply ended the fight without firing a traditional shot. When the last Union ship floated dead in space, with only life support functioning, a single message was received across all comms: this battle should not have happened. We gave the galaxy time to remember. You chose to forget. The survivors were few, and they were allowed to leave. Not because the humans couldn't finish them, but because they wanted witnesses. The message had to spread not through fear, but through experience. The Union Council tried to silence the returning soldiers, but their minds had changed. They had seen what humanity had become: not monsters, not conquerors, but something beyond the old rules. The battle had not been a war, it had been a lesson. The galaxy had judged humanity long ago, labeled them unfit, left them to rot. But now the balance had shifted, and the species once abandoned had become the one thing the galaxy had never prepared for: a survivor with memory. That battle should not have happened because it could never have been won. It was a reminder that peace is a choice, and ignoring a warning has a cost. The galaxy understood too late that humanity had never wanted to return for revenge. But when pushed, when challenged, they didn't fight like the rest, they fought like beings who had already endured the end of the world and had come back stronger. And now, the question on everyone's mind wasn't if humans would attack again, but how long it would take before they decided silence was no longer enough. After the battle that should never have happened, silence returned to the galaxy. But it was not longer the kind of silence that came from ignorance. It was the silence of fear, awe, and realization. The species that had once ruled through alliances and technology now looked to the stars with hesitation, wondering how many human eyes were watching from the dark corners of space. The message was loud without needing volume. Humanity had not just returned, they had evolved beyond everything the galaxy thought possible. No council dared to meet without whispering about Earth. No military dared to move without checking for hidden signals. And then, just as suddenly as they had disappeared before, the humans spoke again, not with warships, not with weapons, but with a single transmission broadcast across every known frequency in the galaxy. It was a voice, calm and composed, speaking in perfect translation to every species. We do not want your thrones, your titles, or your territories. We only want peace secured by truth. From this moment on, the lies end. There is a new order among the stars. At first, many leaders dismissed it as arrogance, another bluff to maintain fear, but then the changes began. Systems long lost to pirates and warlords were reclaimed overnight without a sound. Conflicts that had lasted for generations ended when invisible human drones neutralized weapons mid-flight. Entire star empires that had ruled with tyranny found their networks hacked, their leaders exposed, and their secrets revealed to their own people. No human soldiers landed on planets, no invasions took place, and yet power shifted like gravity had changed direction. The humans had learned not just how to fight, but how to dismantle an enemy without spilling blood. It became clear that this new order was not about control, but about forcing the galaxy to face what it had become: a fractured collection of self-serving powers pretending to protect peace. Humanity's return was not marked by banners or monuments, but by results. Medical technology once guarded by a few species was suddenly shared freely by anonymous sources. Broken planets began to heal with the help of automated machines that came and went like ghosts. The humans didn't demand loyalty, they inspired it. Old enemies began speaking again. Species that had never trusted each other began to cooperate. But the humans made no threats. They issued no demands. They simply observed and corrected, quietly, efficiently. Rumors spread of a hidden council of humans who could predict the next war before it started. They didn't act like rulers, they acted like guardians of a balance they had forged in pain. Some called them watchers, others called them ghosts, but everyone agreed on one thing: the stars no longer belonged to the old powers. They belonged to those who could change, adapt, and survive. Humanity had become the silent law of the universe, not because they ruled it, but because they had mastered what everyone else feared most: loss, suffering, and patience. They had seen the worst the galaxy could do, and had come back unbroken. Years passed, and the galaxy began to shift. New alliances were born, not out of need, but out of understanding. The human presence was never loud, never obvious, but it was always there. Some species embraced them as protectors, others still feared them as monsters, but none could deny that things had changed forever. Earth remained a mystery, never opening fully, never explaining everything, but its shadow now stretched far across the stars. Children of distant planets grew up hearing stories of a time when the galaxy forgot humanity and paid the price. And though no one could say what the future held, they knew one truth more clearly than anything else: the stars had a new order now, not one written by those who claimed to be civilized, but one built by those who had been cast aside and had returned stronger. In the end, the galaxy didn't fall, it simply learned to kneel.